Messalina's intimate life generated numerous judgmental tales among the Romans, but their real concern and fear was her desire for power. Works of art often emphasize Messalina's notoriety as a sensual woman with an unbridled sexual appetite. Empress Messalina was the third wife of Emperor Claudius and became famous as one of the most ruthless rulers of the Roman Empire. In modern perceptions, she epitomizes the image of a woman with an unbridled sex drive, nicknamed the nymphomaniac empress. Her name has become synonymous with unrestrained and unprincipled behavior. Messalina left behind a reputation as the most scandalous woman in Rome, defying the generally accepted norms and rules. In 38, Valeria Messalina became the wife of Tiberius Claudius Nero Germanicus, being no older than 18 years old. Claudius, twice divorced and the father of 2 children, was a distant relative of hers on the line of her sister, Octavian Augustus. Marriage to Messalina was a great honor for Claudius, given her high position in society, which far exceeded the status of his previous wives. In addition, the support of the newly minted Emperor Caligula strengthened his position in terms of succession to the throne. Messalina, for her part, regarded marriage as something secondary. Her husband, despite his noble origins, was an outcast in his own family. His mother called him ugly, his grandfather Augustus forbade him to appear in public with other family members, and his uncle Tiberius excluded him from public office. Claudius, more than anyone else, felt society's dislike of people with physical disabilities. His relatives enjoyed privileges and favorable marriages, while he himself was not held in high esteem, and his noble lineage was of little use to Messalina. Soon after their marriage, the couple had 2 children, and Claudius ascended to the throne quite unexpectedly. After Caligula's assassination in 41, Claudius hid in a military camp and negotiated with the Senate for 2 days to be recognized as the new ruler. Messalina's husband, who had not previously given much hope, suddenly lived up to it by being on the throne. Messalina, barely 20 years old, enthusiastically stepped into the role of empress. Soon after Claudius ascended the throne, she made history as the first woman to bear an heir to the emperor. The information available today about the relationship between Emperor Claudius and his wife, Messalina, comes from the works of historians, Tacitus and Suetonius. These authors began to describe their lives years after the death of Messalina, in the era when there was a critical rethinking of the deeds of the first Roman emperors. In his work, Life of the 12 Caesars, Suetonius devoted only scant and inexpressive lines to this couple, while Tacitus paid more attention to their history. Messalina's early years as Claudius's wife and empress were not covered in detail in their writings, making it difficult to understand exactly when her infamy began to take shape, from the beginning of their reign or later. The Romans often attributed self-interest to women as an innate quality, unlike men who became self-interested in the course of their lives. Under Roman law, women were regarded as lacking full legal capacity, which limited their rights, including the right to own property. Messalina's views may have changed over time, but 6 years after Claudius took office as emperor, Tacitus dubbed her a monster. In his writings, Messalina appears as a deft manipulator over her consort, using him to fight personal enemies, such as Valerius Asiaticus and Poppaea Sabina. Asiaticus, owner of the cherished gardens of Lucullus, was the victim of Messalina's slander, who spread rumors of his affair with Poppaea, who in turn attracted Messalina's attention by having a lover she had her eye on. Claudius ordered the arrest of both men and sentenced Asiaticus to death. Poppaea was imprisoned where, according to Tacitus, she committed suicide under pressure from agents sent by Messalina. Tacitus notes that Messalina actively used the judicial system and state resources to achieve her selfish ends. She took revenge on opponents who rejected her love proposals or simply on those who were not sympathetic to her. The empress drove out relatives, disposed of rivals. She deceived her husband, frightened him with signs so that he obeyed her will. Thus, Messalina turned personal offenses into political repression. Messalina's fate was predetermined by her own actions. Ancient Roman chroniclers described her downfall and subsequent execution with relish and humor. Tacitus also mentions the last days of her life in his writings. Other writers also kept accounts of Messalina, including the poet Juvenal, who in his poems harshly condemned her actions. A century later, the historian Cassius Dio continued the image of Messalina as a villain, dubbing her the most lecherous and insatiable of women. The plot unfolds in 48, when Messalina begins an affair with Senator Gaius Silius. The role of Silius varies from source to source. In Juvenal and Dion, he is a victim of her influence, while Tacitus sees him as an active accomplice. Messalina lavishes him with gifts ranging from valuables to houses. Their liaison lasts until it becomes public knowledge. Silius separates from his wife, and Messalina, who holds the position of imperial wife, finds herself in a difficult situation. Soon the lovers commit an act that to this day causes surprise and doubt among historians. They played a wedding during the absence of Claudius in Ostia. Messalina puts on a brightly colored wedding veil and openly goes to the house of Silas, where they exchange vows. A celebration follows, during which, according to Tacitus, Messalina unravels her hair. So far, scholars have not reached a consensus on the authenticity of these events. Was it a real wedding, or just a theatrical production? There is an opinion that it was an attempt to overthrow Claudius. But the final truth remains unknown, since none of the participants in the events did not live to see the morning. News of the wedding quickly reached Claudius in Ostia. His advisors sent his concubines to him to report that Messalina had publicly disowned him and married another. According to Tacitus, the emperor panics, fearing a plot against his power. He immediately orders the arrest of the conspirators. Messalina is taken to the gardens of Lucullus, and Silius is brought before the emperor in a military camp. For treason, Silius and his supporters were executed. Claudius hesitates in deciding the fate of Messalina. They have been married for 10 years. She is the mother of his children and the woman he loves. After cooling down, he decides to hear her out the next day. However, the emperor's entourage fears that she can escape a just punishment and acts on her own. They deceitfully order the centurions and tribune to kill Messalina, passing it off as the will of Claudius. Tacitus tells us that, trapped in the gardens, Messalina does not give up and tries to find a way out, but in vain. The soldiers give her a chance to end her life, but she does not take it, and one of the tribunes pierces her with a sword. To the news of his wife's death, Claudius, according to Tacitus, reacts indifferently. He asks for wine and continues to participate in the traditional banquet. Even in the days that follow, he shows neither hatred, nor joy, nor anger, nor sorrow, nor any human feeling. The Roman state cursed the memory of Messalina by removing her name from everywhere and destroying paintings and monuments. But such actions only increased interest in her persona. Messalina's sexual pastimes and romantic adventures became the basis of numerous rumors and anecdotes, which in historical context overlapped all her deeds and political intrigues. Rumors and gossip began to spread long ago. Pliny the Elder, who as a young man served as an officer in Germany during the time of Emperor Claudius, created an encyclopedic work on nature in which he conceptualized the issues of sexuality in mammals. He noted that only humans have no definite time for reproduction and are always seeking sexual pleasures. As an example, he cites the story of Empress Messalina, who entered into a contest with a prostitute to see which of them was capable of spending the night with the greatest number of men. Messalina emerged victorious after 25 encounters. A generation later, this story took on even more explicit features in Juvenal's retelling. He described Messalina as an Imperial Harlot, and said that every night she pretended to be a blonde, a hair color associated with barbarians, and went to an inexpensive brothel where she stayed until dawn, leaving there exhausted but not satisfied. By 220, when Cassius Dio created his Roman history, the legend of Messalina moved to the walls of the imperial palace. There, he says, she gathered men, offering them sexual favors from herself and other aristocrats, forcing some of them into prostitution. Dion also recounts the fate of the dancer Nestor, who became the object of Messalina's attentions. After refusals, Messalina complains to her husband that Nestor does not obey her, and Claudius, not suspecting the deception, orders the dancer to fulfill all the desires of his wife. History shows that Messalina's downfall was so epic that people would believe any story about her. Such stories undermined Messalina's reputation and exposed the mechanisms of Roman misogyny. In historical sources, such as the works of Tacitus, Suetonius, and Dion, Messalina is portrayed as lecherous yet cunning, calculating, and ruthless. She weaved intrigue with allies within her house and in the Senate, schemed, sought power, tormented her enemies through courts and alliances, and operated a network of informers and spies, controlling her husband, and through it ruling the empire. These acts are disturbing, but also compel respect for Messalina as a person. Nevertheless, in the popular imagination, these traits give way to her promiscuity. Writers have used Messalina's image to emphasize her depravity. She does not appear as a political figure, but as a woman gripped by lust, operating in the shadows of the bedroom. Her sexual scandals expel her from the public sphere of male power and politics, and return her to the domestic, private sphere of wife and mother. Her complex image is simplified into a stereotypical, sex-obsessed villainess. But Messalina's real scandals were that she overstepped the boundaries of behavior prescribed by her status as empress and intervened too explicitly in the brutal political battles of the empire, peaking in a quest for power that was bizarre but open. To consider her only the Imperial Harlot and the most lecherous woman in Rome would be unfair. Messalina represents a far more complex and interesting personality than just her well-known reputation.